The National Dialogue on Nation Building and Social Cohesion is underway in Cape Town. And let's cross live to Lukhanyo Calata, who has been tracking this crucial event.
Welcome back to Cape Town, where we continue to broadcast to you from Tamboerskloof here, where we are broadcasting the National Foundation's Dialogues initiatives. We've been here since very early this morning when the dialogues kicked off, and basically the delegates that are representing some 200 organizations from around the city of Cape Town are hosted by the foundations, including the foundation, the FW de Klerk Foundation, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundations, and the series of dialogues started on the 5th of May in Johannesburg. It's now moved down to Cape Town, and we were told by the chairperson, Ms. Nomhle Khanqa, that from here on out they will try to spread the dialogues all across the provinces, so that South Africans sitting at home and just concerned about the plight of the country and the direction that the country is taking in can take part and be involved, particularly on issues on how we can build social cohesion, and ask the question as to where we are as a nation. We've now entered the last hour of the dialogue, and the groups that had earlier broken up are now all back together, and they are all receiving feedback from one another on how those small cafe-style groups that had taken place earlier on have panned out. Let's see if we can take a quick listen to some of that feedback.
With ourselves, and then embedding core values and principles within ourselves that will motivate true and honest character within ourselves, that we can then pass on from generation to generation and within our communities. If we can start with that within ourselves, like the speaker said earlier, where it all starts with your mindset and having a sense of hope and a sense of love. So if we operating from that perspective, then obviously the result would also be from that perspective. So looking at changing mindsets for ourselves, and then that would relate into change within our communities. Just shortly in terms of community participation. Thank you.
You know, it's so nice to see that you guys have stuck around. I'm so glad that you're still here. And I mean, sincerely, this day for quite a few people was challenging. I know at least one or two that decided to walk out because they didn't like what they heard. I know there have been a few people that have vetted, and that's good. You need to vet somewhere. You can't keep it in. But I also know that there were a few words of comfort, and certainly a lot of wisdom that was offered throughout the course of the day. So my job is to say thank you, and I think the first thank you that I need to convey is to all of you that have been here today. Thank you for accepting the challenge. Thank you for putting yourself out there. Thank you for allowing the opportunity for the other in our life and our community to enter your world and engage. Thank you. And then I need to thank people that have actually given very, very practical assistance and help. And I just want to start with the venue that we find ourselves in. The Protea Hotels the Fire and Ice brand, they offered us this venue for free, which is a huge deal. That is a huge deal, and they are to be congratulated for making that offer and supporting us. I also want to acknowledge a donation from Hanlil Rupert Trust that assisted us in funding this event. You guys need to remember we're an NGO, and we appreciate these donations where they come from and in terms of the place of building and supporting from which it comes. I'd also like to acknowledge the SABC. The SABC, as you know, has been doing a live streaming. Some of you have been interviewed. And I think you can attest to the professional manner in which they've approached this event and that they've engaged with us during the course of today. There are a lot of things that have been said about our public broadcaster, some of them not so complimentary. I want to compliment the SABC for bringing our voices and bringing our compliments to this. Thank you. Thank you, SABC. I also want to thank first the student volunteers. I don't know if they're still here. I think they've already headed home. There were a lot of student volunteers that assisted us in organizing this event, but more importantly, they were here today to assist with the actual event. And this thing about young people putting themselves out there, young people engaging. I have young people in my house, and I live with them. They don't engage me, so I'm always impressed when I come across young people that are willing to engage. So thank you to those student volunteers. To the facilitators, all of our facilitators, you have had the benefit of their experience and the way in which they've managed us today. They did all of that free of charge. Thank you to our facilitators. And then our speakers, because they got us started, they got us engaged, they challenged us, they brought these issues from different perspectives on the same subject. And that's how dialogue works. And as you could tell from the inputs that they gave this morning, they gave a lot of thought, and they troubled themselves around this issue, and they engaged themselves around this subject. And we want to thank them for the time and the trouble that was offered by them for free. Thank you very much to our four speakers. And then I'd like to acknowledge our hosts in the Western Cape, the three foundations that put all of this together. I mentioned them before, the Jake Gerwel Foundation, the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, and the Tutu Foundation. They worked hard. This doesn't happen at the snap of a finger, and it happens in addition to all the other things that are in your inbox. And we appreciate the way that they were able to juggle and bring us all to the forefront at the time that we needed to. We want to thank those foundation members that put this together. Great effort, great reward. Siabong. Lastly, I would like to thank the people in the office, the administrators, the ones that really do the work, the people other than the chair that actually make the NFDI look well. And those are the guys in the NFDI office, as well as all the members of the reference group of the NFDI. Without your vision and your support, and without your freely making your goodwill available to the rest of us, we wouldn't be able to carry on this concept of a national dialogue initiative. And we thank the members of the NFDI for that. that brings me to the end of my task. But hopefully it doesn't bring us to the end of the journey that we are going to take together. This was not planned, and it's certainly not something that we do without planning. So
That was Nomhle Kanta there, who is the chairperson of the National Foundation's Dialogue Initiatives, basically thanking everybody for their presence here today, just for their contributions to what has turned out to be quite a fantastic day, with just the 200 or so delegates that attended the function, that were able to speak freely about the issues that they feel need to be addressed in modern day South Africa, issues that they feel that they remain outstanding, and up until those issues are addressed, as a South Africa we can never really get to where we aspire to be, and social change and social cohesion will just remain words. And I mean, it's been, we saw Dr. Bani Pichana this morning, who was first out of the blocks, basically, and he said that it's very important that in a democracy like South Africa's, that the citizenry be active to protect the democracy and to build social cohesion. But if I could now see if I could bring in Dr. Tiens Elof from the FW de Klerk Foundation, just to talk to us very briefly about their impressions of the day as the hosts of these dialogues in the Western Cape today. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. With the co-host with the Tutu Foundation and the Gerwel Foundation, we're quite happy, firstly, with the turnout. We had, as we wanted, about 150 to 200 people. You can go for 500, but then it's not manageable. And in a sense, and I think that's very important, this was the first process in the Western Cape. So in May, we had the National Dialogue launched in Johannesburg. This is the first regional dialogue. And we hope to take it to the Eastern Cape and to KwaZulu-Natal, to all the other provinces in the next 2-3 months. So as 3 foundations here in the Western Cape volunteered and said we'll do the first step. So that's the first point. The second one is that what we did is we just looked at our own databases as well as that of the other foundations. And we then said, okay, which other organizations do we think would have benefit of doing this? So in a sense, this is a select group. I know that there's been criticism that there's not been enough African faces here, and we accept that criticism. We hope that through this and through the organizations that were involved, that this would multiply, replicate, as we go to local level in the next months.
So how do you then broaden, what do you take from this that you then broaden into local communities to try to take the debate forward?
We've had, as we saw, a little bit of feedback, I would almost say, on the process issues. We must have community communications, but they are in the feedback. We didn't have time for that to give a report back, but a lot of issues that came up, I would imagine, like poverty and housing and nation building and reconciliation would all have been in there. So the idea would be that, as with the national, we would make up an agenda and say the issues that emerge today are the following. That's the first point. The second point is, and we asked the same question to the groups, to say, give us ideas how we could take this and roll it out to the local level. We think, for instance, that there's a large resource of faith-based organizations, churches, who, if given the chance to say, will you not be able and willing to organize local dialogues in a town, a town like Worcester, or in Langa, or in Oudtshoorn, wherever. That combined with the community-based organizations, and then you haven't even touched on civil organizations. You haven't even touched things like the unions and things like that. So we are going to put put the challenge out there to the local organizations. Obviously, we would like to have the framework of inclusivity, honesty, those things that we spoke about today in there.
So thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate it. That was Dr. Tiens Elof from the FW de Klerk Foundation, basically telling us that they are happy with the turnout today, that they've learned a few lessons that they hope to then expand upon as they take these dialogues into communities, into local communities. Well, from us and the team that brought you the National Foundation's Dialogue Initiative, it is goodbye, and thank you very much for having joined us today.